we have been in the book of Luke, and we have been journeying with Jesus. And last week, if you can recall, we left Jesus in Jericho, where he met a very rich man, the chief tax collector, Zacchaeus, who he invited himself over for dinner, fished Zacchaeus out from a tree, and says, "Today I'm going to have dinner with you, my brother." We know that Zacchaeus was a very rich guy and that he was a chief tax collector, so you can say he's a chief traitor, an enemy of the Jewish people, because the tax collectors worked for the colonial powers to collect taxes from their own people and to finance their own oppression. And so he was the chief enemy. We were almost at the end of Luke, because we were in Luke 19, 6 more to go, and I was really anxious to kind of just finish Luke and move on to John or Matthew or whatever. Jericho, of course, was where we left Jesus, was only 40 kilometers away from Jerusalem, Jesus' final destination. Jesus already wrapped up some 150 kilometers from Galilee, his home territory, heading south. And so it's fair to say that he was almost at the end of a very long journey. And today, in Luke 6, and All Saints Sunday, it's like Luke says, no, you're not ready for Jerusalem. We're going back. You can't handle what's ahead, so I'm taking you back. I'm taking you back to the very beginning, back to where it all started, back to the early days, at home and amongst his own people on familiar territory. And so we're back home, back to Galilee. Jesus had just appointed his 12 apostles from a multitude of followers. And it's fair to say that these guys have absolutely no idea what was ahead, the type of glimpse that we saw from reading up to 19. They're just at 6. They're new. They have no idea what was ahead. But they said, yes, Jesus, we're going to follow you. He had fished Simon, the Levite, from the tax booth. He's already fished out Peter from the Sea of Galilee, where he was fishing all night and couldn't get anything. So these guys were already on board. And so they're ready for their journey. Sometimes, I guess, when you feel that you have arrived, when you're close to your destination, like Jericho was from Jerusalem, when you're close to your personal and financial or your life goals, whatever closeness looks like, we have to go back. We need to go back to the beginning, back to where it all started. Because sometimes we arrive at our destination, or we're close to where we need to go, and we don't even recognize ourselves. We don't even recognize the people we've traveled with. Things have changed. And this is partly what we are reminded to do on All Saints' Day, to look back and to remember the lives and the witnesses of the saints, famous or obscure, whether they were our parents, our grandmothers who led us to faith and are now counted amongst those members, those who are now amongst the great clouds of witnesses gathered around the throne of God who've gone before us. And so today we look back and give thanks to God for their lives and for the power of their witness that have shaped and continue to nourish us so that we stay on track and we stay faithful. How many people have folks in their lives that they can remember who have nourished them in the faith, who have been an anchor, who have washed them in prayer and have paved the way for them to say, yes, I want to follow this Jesus. So I'm speaking to the right crowd. Thanks be to God. So today we are back to the beginning of the mission of Jesus. And Jesus is speaking and preaching to his new recruits. They're fresh. And so today is their orientation to the mission. By Luke 6, we know that Jesus is already recognized as a healer and a teacher by a great multitude, and that he was at home. The disciples have all been issued an invitation. They've accepted to come and follow. And each by 6 have already had a very close and personal experience of Jesus. Simon's mother-in-law was healed. Simon Peter had been fished out of the Sea of Galilee. They all had a personal, up-close experience with Jesus that made them say, yes, sign me up. And so today, with these fresh group of 12 apostles and a multitude of disciples, Jesus issued 4 carefully worded blessings. 4 carefully worded blessings and 4 carefully worded curses, some really bad words to his audience. The 12 apostles and the multitude of the disciples who followed him, the poor, the hungry, the grieving, the excluded, to them he offered words of blessing. You are blessed. Words of comfort, words of assurance that they had indeed made the right decision to leave their life behind to follow this traveling preacher and to join this new movement. But he also spoke some very harsh words to those who came to listen, but came to trap him. Those who greeted his mission with hostility, because by Luke 6, Jesus was already well known, and he was already seen as a threat to the established order. And so what was Jesus doing in his first little sermon in classroom, I would say, to his first followers? Jesus was teaching them a new way of thinking, a new way of making sense of the world in which they lived and the values of the new kingdom they were being enlisted in. He was teaching them a new set of behavior, contrary to the ones that they knew before, that was required of them as followers of this new movement. Jesus was giving them a radical new orientation in HR term. How many people here work in HR? The new term is onboarding. Onboarding. This was a radical onboarding of these new recruits. And this radical new orientation characterized by a total reversal of fortunes, a total reversal of the social and economic status values of the world in which they lived. They were being reordered and restructured according to the values of the kingdom of God. And in this new radically restructured order, the poor are blessed with a kingdom. You know, the poor have nothing. But in this order, the poor are citizens. They enjoy divine citizenship in God's kingdom. In this radically reordered world, those who are hungry are what? Will be filled. Their belly full with the abundant provisions of God. In this radically restructured world order, those who weep will what? Laugh in the new kingdom where sorrow and pain are no more. All of that is canceled. And those who are excluded, hated. How many people have experienced exclusion and have been hated? How many people? But I'm talking to the right audience. Those who have experienced all of that toxicity will rejoice, leaping and dancing drunk in the fullness of joy, because in his presence there is fullness of joy and pleasures evermore. That's what the psalmist says. But there were other words. There were words aimed at those who remain hostile to his message and to this movement. Because by Luke 6, Jesus already wrapped up some serious enemies. He was already driven from the synagogue and almost pushed over a cliff because of the rage that his words incited. He had already been challenged and interrogated over fasting and Sabbath violation and hanging out with the wrong group of people. So to this section of his audience, Jesus directed 4 harsh woes, curses, condemnations, warning to those who were rich, warning to the greedy, warning to those who were satisfied with the current order of things because it was working well for them. Those who enjoyed status, social standing, a good reputation, and position in their society. Warning that the privilege they now enjoy was not secure. And they would end up like the false prophets of the past. Very harsh words. To his disciples, Jesus broke open the values of the kingdom, the new kingdom that they had signed up to be a part of. And this new kingdom, fortunes, social and economic standings were reversed, upside down, reordered and restructured God's way. The poor would inherit the kingdom. No more hunger, and the hungry would be filled. The end of grief, exclusion, hatred, and suffering, all replaced with joy, and where the rich and the powerful are being called out and held to account. This was a new world that they were being onboarded to. And so accompanying these new reordered values is also a changed behavior. This fresh, radical, new way of thinking that they were being oriented to adopt. From that would flow new behavior that was countercultural to what they knew, and that was guided by love. Jesus said, listen in, because this is some serious business. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. I can imagine those disciples are looking around because the enemy is just there. They're looking around. Even them! No exception, no partiality. Bless those who curse you. And they were right there, the one who was cursing them. Turn the other cheek. Pray for your abusers, the one who are right next to you. Pray for them. Pronounce blessing on those who abuse you. Give to those in need. Do to others as you would have them do to you. This is where we get the golden rule. Restated in Matthew 7:12, it says, in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you. And this is the clincher. Matthew wants to hammer it home a little bit deeper. For this is the law and the prophets. This is the summary of everything from the law. I mean, how many laws are there? I think it's over 600. But when you do this, it summarizes everything. The laws, and this is what the prophets came for. For those who agreed to participate in this new movement, they would have to adopt these new countercultural values and behavior and integrate them into their new identity and way of navigating the world. It's almost as if he was saying, you are a new creature. You are a new creation. Those values of the past are no longer relevant to this movement. Leave them behind. They were being oriented to be agents of radical love. Love that knew no boundary, but love that was extended to the enemy, to your abusers, those who hate you, and those who exclude you. Can you imagine if that love started to take form right here in our midst? Can you imagine for a moment if that type of love was supposed to land in our midst as believers and followers of Jesus Christ? The gates of hell would not be able to prevail against us. This love that Jesus broke open to his disciples, those early followers, this radical countercultural love expressed in some outrageous ways that we see from 6 to 19, how that's expressed. Do good to those who hate you. Didn't Jesus show us the way how that was done? Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. Be slow to retaliate. Don't retaliate at all. Leave that to God. Yes. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, turn the other one. Be a generous giver. Be extravagant in your generosity. Whoever takes away your coat, give him your shirt. Yes. Give him your skirt. Yes. Your socks, whatever. We're talking about crazy, radical generosity. This was the unboarding that these guys, you can just imagine them looking at each other going, are you sure you've done the right thing? I only have one shirt. But they had yet to experience the Jesus who fed thousands with nothing. Amen? They had not experienced the power of this God who says, give it all because I am the God who provides. I am the God who will be with you to the very end. And so, beloved people of St. Stephen's, what does this message have to say to us, our 21st century listeners? What's in it for us this morning? What's in it for us on this All Saints Sunday when we remember the saints whose lives and witness have nourished us and shaped our faith and given us a template from which to walk and to live? Well, perhaps we are being prompted to look back. Just look back. You know, that's what Luke did. He took us back. Look back on our own faith journey. We need to look back. Because sometimes we need to go back to our beginning to remember from whence we have traveled. Sometimes we need to look back to just make sure we're staying on the right path. That we're staying faithful to the one who has called us, formed us, and sent us out to bear witness to this love that he broke open to those early followers. And so today we might be led to ask ourselves, has the message of Jesus penetrated our thinking? Do we think God's way as these early followers were being oriented to do? They were being oriented to see themselves and their neighbor and the world in which they live in a radically different way. Well, I have good news for you this morning. The that Jesus wants to penetrate our minds, wants to penetrate our thinking. Jesus wants to manifest godness in us, goodness in our minds, because that's really where it all begins, in our minds. And that's why Jesus really approached their mind. It was a session about their values, the way that they think. I have good news that Jesus wants to change our thinking. Jesus wants to penetrate our mind. Jesus wants to manifest godness in our minds so that our priorities and our values can be realigned, reoriented to the way of God, to the values of the kingdom. Has the message of Jesus penetrated our behavior in a recognizable way so others can see Jesus in us? I have more good news. Jesus wants to change our behavior, to penetrate our actions. Jesus wants to manifest godness, goodness in our behavior so that others can see the light of Jesus in us. Amen? Amen. So that others can taste the salt. Because we are called to be the light and the what? The salt. Have taste. We make a difference. We have value. We preserve. We uphold. Wherever we go, we shed a light. We make it a little bit better. We seize the common. We add hope and respect and honor wherever we go. Jesus wants to change our minds, wants to penetrate our minds and our behavior, and to bring godness, goodness in our thinking and in our behavior. Today we are being reminded as these early followers and the saints who have gone before that we who follow Jesus must manifest Jesus in our thinking, in our values, and in our behavior so that others might come to know Him. So that others might come to know Jesus through us. Today we are being called back to follow this Jesus, the God of the great reversals, the God who turns things upside down, and the God who commands us to put His love in action right where we are. To bless and to pray for our enemies within our families, within the family of God. To be agents of peace. Can you imagine if that love, if some of that lands down in our family and amongst the people of God, to be agents of peace? Because that's what He was telling His disciples. Don't retaliate. Bless those who curse you. Bless those who harm you. Bless those who hate you. Today, beloved, we are being called back to this Jesus, the God of great reversals, who commands us to put His love in action, to bless and to pray for our enemies, to be agents of peace, and to be agents of extravagant generosity right where we are planted. Amen. We bless the name of this Jesus.